Given this information, we're going to be asked to find what the birth rate would be projected to be in the future beyond 2005. So we are given enough information to write two ordered pairs. They tell us that X is years after 1995, Y is the birth rate. So for this first one here, okay, the years after 1995 is 0, and the birth rate is 14.7. That's our first ordered pair. And for this second one, okay, the year 2005 is 10 years after 1995. So that the X value is 10, and the Y value is simply 14.24. Okay, so that's the first step, and they want us to write an equation. We're still a fair bit away from being able to do that. First, we'll need to find the slope. That's the relationship between these two points. Remember your formula for slope. I think I'll have to move this up a little. Is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And it's always a good idea to label these points. It's very easy to forget what they are. So this first one is x sub 1, then y sub 1. The next one is x sub 2, and then y sub 2. Okay, now we're going to plug these values in here, and we'll be able to calculate the slope. So for the very first one, before we even start, should I work? I'll work vertically, and again, I'm going to just keep sliding this up. So before I plug anything in, I have this sitting here, okay? This is what's already on my paper. And now I'm going to plug in these X and Y values, okay? So let's see, Y sub 2 is 14.24. And Y sub 1 is 14.7. Then X sub 2 is 10. And X sub 1 is 0. And doing these calculations, I think I'm not sure which way I'll go. I'll just slide this up some more. Alright, so we've got 14.24. Notice 14.7 is a larger value. So this is going to end up being negative. And you have to put 14.7 on top. Alright, so there's 14.7. And I'm going to subtract 14.24. So obviously I'll need a 0 here in order to subtract. And the answer is going to be negative. Okay? So we've got a 6, a 4, and those are zeros, right? Well, I guess I'll put 0.46. And then this is going to be over 10. So I guess I'll go sideways a little bit here. We get negative 0.46 over a denominator of 10. So this is our slope. Okay? We figured out the slope. And what we want is eventually an equation. So we have a slope, and we could pick either of these 2 points. So since we have that available to us, what we're going to do is we're going to make use of our trusty point slope equation. Well, actually, I think I'll leave this up here. All right, so the point slope equation is y minus y1 is equal to m, that's our slope, times x minus x1. All right, and now we're just going to plug in some values. All right. We have a slope right here. We can pick either of these 2 points. That might be surprising, but it doesn't matter which one we pick. I'm going to pick this one because it's going to be easier to work with. Notice x1 is 0. So that will just clean up more quickly. All right, before I put anything on the paper, the stuff that's sitting here is y minus, then equals x minus. All right, and now I simply plug in my x1, y1, and m. All right, so m is kind of involved g. I'll leave it in this form. Sometimes it's worthwhile to change that around. But so we've got a negative, I'm just going to say 0.46 over 10. All right, that's our slope. And then for our x and y values, I'm going to pick this first point because my x1 is 0, and that's going to be real easy to work with. I just put in a 0 right there. All right, y1 is 14.7. Make sure you can see that. All right, and now we've got to clean this up some. Notice really not much happens. When I send in the negative 0.46 over 10, it only goes to this first term, or I mean, it actually goes to the second term, but times 0 is just a 0. Okay? So I'm just going to rewrite this without the parentheses, since I really don't need them. So we have y minus 14.7 is equal to a negative 0.46 over 10 x. Now that's looking rather strange. All right, we want y by itself, essentially because what I want to do is get this in slope-intercept form. Let me write that. Slope-intercept. I'm just going to put int, but this is slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. I want to arrange this in this form, so I need to get rid of this negative 14.7. I'll say plus 14.7. I have to do the same thing on the other side of the equal sign. Okay, so plus 14.7. And then I'll just draw a line, bring everything down, and see what we're looking at here. So we've got y. I really should have just brought that over. Well, I'll leave it there. This is a 0. Of course, I don't have to write it. Negative 0.46 over 10 x plus 14.7. This equation is now in slope-intercept form. Again, that's looking kind of strange, but let's see. So they're, in the directions they're asking us to use integers or decimals. 0.46 over 10, that can be rewritten. All right. So if I divide by 10, this number is going to get a little bit smaller, so the decimal will move one place to the left. So this is going to become a negative 0.046 x. That's all I did was 0.46 divided by 10. And then this just comes down and we'll write this a little more compactly. Okay, so here we have our excuse me, equation written in slope-intercept form. And I'm going to zoom out for a second for this last question. Okay. I'll go in one more. Okay, so X is years after 1995. That's what X stands for. Okay. And they want to know the birth rate in the year 2015. So they want to know the birth rate in the year, excuse me, 2015. How many years after 1995? That's 20 years later. Okay? So the X value is going to be 20, because that stands for how many years after 1995. And the Y value, we're going to have to find out what that is. So what we'll do is we'll plug our X value in our equation right here. All right, so I'll zoom in a little bit to do the calculation. So remember, we're saying X is 20. Maybe I'll put that in parentheses to show I'm going to multiply. Negative 0.046 all right, so I'll do this off to the side here. We've got 0.046 times 20. When I multiply by 0, nothing happens. Before I can multiply by that 2, I guess I'll put my multiplication in there. I have to put a 0 here to start. And now 2 times 6, 8, 9. Well, 2 times 0 is 0. Doesn't matter. Okay, so you have 3 decimal places. You start here and move in 3 places. All right, so this term right here becomes a negative 0.920 plus 14.7. So let me section that off. All right. All right, so now we just have to clean this up, and we've got 14.7, and we're trying to subtract 0.920. Okay, and we'll need a couple zeros here so we can do some borrowing. Well, this one wasn't really important. This one is important. 7, 6, 10, there's our 8. Is that a 7? Okay. This is going to be a positive value. All right. So we found out that Y, the birth rate, is 13.78. I can drop that trailing 0. So I think I'll plug that back in my ordered pair. Let me zoom out real quick. There we go. So we figured out that Y is 13.78. That would go in my ordered pair. 13.78. And this makes sense. Each year the birth rate is claimed to be going down in this particular country. It went from 14.7 births per thousand in the population to 14.24, and finally over 20 years later it's down to 13.78 per thousand people.